Have you ever found yourself in a moment where your heart whispers, maybe this time he'll choose me, even though he's made it clear he won't? It's that quiet ache, not loud, not dramatic, just a steady throb of uncertainty every time he texts you late at night, every time he shows up without a promise. He says he doesn't want anything serious, and yet he keeps coming back, and part of you hopes, part of you waits, part of you wonders if you're the exception he hasn't realized yet. When a man tells you he doesn't want commitment but still wants your presence, it's not just about him. It becomes about the part of you that still believes you must earn love, that maybe if you're kind enough, patient enough, giving enough, he'll change his mind. That maybe, just maybe, your devotion will be the magic that transforms him. But love that asks you to stay small isn't love. It's a contract with your own insecurity, and that hurts. Because you know you deserve more, but something in you, some voice from long ago, still tells you to wait. Louise Hay reminds us, what we believe about ourselves becomes true for us. And if you believe you must wait for someone to choose you, you might still be postponing the moment you choose yourself. There's nothing wrong with wanting love. There's nothing wrong with hoping. But when that hope becomes a leash, gently strangling your worth, it's no longer hope. It's emotional captivity dressed as romance. This isn't just about a man who's unsure. This is about a woman who's unsure of her own enoughness. A woman who confuses attention with affection, presence with partnership, and availability with love. You're not weak for feeling this. You're human. You're tender. You're real. And you deserve someone who doesn't just come back, but stays, grows, and commits. Brené Brown once said that setting boundaries is not about shutting others out. It's about choosing ourselves, even when it feels like a loss. Choosing your peace, even when your heart wants to gamble on crumbs. Saying no to what confuses you, even when the silence that follows feels unbearable. Because silence, at least, is honest. False hope is not. In today's video, we're not going to talk about how to make him fall in love, or how to play harder to get. This isn't about strategies to win someone who isn't ready. This is about something far more powerful. It's about seeing this moment, this in-between, as an invitation to come home to yourself. What if this isn't a rejection? What if it's a redirection? What if the universe is using his confusion to wake you up to your own clarity? You see, the true win here isn't about changing his mind. It's about seeing what this situation is asking you to remember. Your dignity, your depth, your desires. So let's walk through this together. Let's look at why you stay, what this teaches, and how your deepest power isn't in waiting for him, but in finally returning to you. There's a particular kind of ache that lives in the space between what he says and what you wish he meant. He tells you he doesn't want anything serious, but his arms around you feel real. He avoids the word relationship, but he keeps texting, keeps calling, keeps showing up, just enough to keep your hope alive. And in that fragile space, a silent agreement forms. Maybe if I stay, he'll see. Maybe if I give more, he'll want more. But that maybe, it becomes a prison. This is the emotional trap, not of love, but of longing. A longing that begins to rewrite your needs. You start saying yes when your body wants to say no. You begin dimming your desires to avoid scaring him off. You try to become easier to love, forgetting that real love never asks you to shrink. And every time he returns with just enough affection to soothe your doubt, the cycle begins again. The waiting, the wondering, the wishing. What hurts the most isn't his refusal to change. It's your hope that keeps bargaining with reality. That deep, secret belief that if you endure long enough, love will arrive as a reward. But love doesn't work like that. Love isn't something you earn by staying silent. It isn't something you prove by waiting patiently for someone else to heal. Love isn't the prize for who sacrifices the most of herself. Sometimes, the most painful realization is this. The version of him you're waiting for doesn't exist. Not because he's cruel, not because you're not worthy, but because you created that version from your unmet needs, not from his real intentions. And when a woman loves from that place, she confuses fantasy with faith. She believes she's being loyal, when in truth, she's abandoning herself in installments. But the soul always knows. Somewhere, quietly, it whispers, "This isn't enough." You feel it after he leaves. You feel it in the silence between his messages. You feel it when you try to explain to your friends why you're still there, and the words don't even convince you anymore. And so, this is not about judging yourself. This is about seeing the pattern, seeing the pain, seeing the hope that has turned into self-neglect. Because once you see, you can choose. Not him, you. You can choose what story you'll keep telling. And maybe, just maybe, you'll choose to believe in a version of love that doesn't ask you to wait in the shadows. There's something almost haunting about the way he returns. Just when you begin to breathe without him, just when you start to gather the broken pieces and find your footing again, he reappears, with a message, with a memory, with that familiar tone that makes your heart flutter and ache at the same time. And for a moment, everything you tried to forget comes rushing back. The laughter, the chemistry, the potential that was never fully realized. You wonder, if I didn't matter, why does he keep coming back? But here's the quiet truth most women feel but rarely name. He comes back not because he sees your worth, but because he senses your willingness, your openness, your softness. He feels safe in the comfort of your love, even if he doesn't know how to honor it. He returns not to give you more, but to receive what he misses when you're gone. Your warmth, your attention, your emotional presence. And you, with that tender hope still burning low, open the door again. Not because you don't see what's happening, but because a part of you still hopes this time might be different. That hope is not foolish. It's rooted in your capacity to love deeply. But love, when not met, becomes self-abandonment. When you welcome someone back who only offers you partial presence, you're not just saying yes to him, you're saying no to your own boundaries. You're trading your emotional security for another moment of temporary closeness. And with each return, the wound reopens, deeper than before. It's not just about why he comes back. It's about why you say yes. What part of you is still hungry for scraps, believing they are a feast? What old belief still whispers that something is better than nothing, even if that something leaves you hollow? There's no shame in letting him in again. You did it with love, with sincerity. But when love isn't mutual, sincerity becomes sacrifice. And over time, sacrifice begins to silence your soul. So if you've let him back more times than you care to admit, know this. You're not weak. You're not naive. You're simply learning, layer by layer, what your heart truly needs. And one day, when the door stays closed, it won't be out of bitterness. It will be out of reverence for the woman you've become. There's a sacred moment in a woman's life when she stops asking, "Why doesn't he choose me?" and starts remembering, "I was never meant to beg to be seen." It doesn't come easily. It often comes after heartbreak, after silence, after the nights where tears soaked the pillow but pride kept the phone untouched. It comes when the soul gets tired, not angry, not loud, just quietly exhausted from being offered less than she gives. Louise Hay taught that we are worthy of love simply because we exist, not because someone desires us, not because someone returns, not because someone finally decides we are enough. Worth is not a reward, it is a truth. And when you know your value, you stop trying to convince others to see it. You become the one who sees it first. You become the one who protects it. But knowing your worth isn't a loud declaration. It's not something you post on a good day or whisper to the mirror once in a while. It's a practice, a daily, quiet honoring of your emotional space. It's in how you respond to silence, in how you hold yourself when love is withheld, in how you say, "This hurts, but I won't chase what doesn't choose me." Because value doesn't negotiate with indecisiveness. It doesn't shrink to fit someone else's fears. It doesn't wait in corners hoping to be picked. Value stands, gently, steadily, without rage, without begging. Just a knowing, I am enough, even here, even now, especially now. When a man says, "I'm not ready for something serious," and you know you want depth, staying is not loyalty. It's a quiet betrayal of your own clarity. But when you believe in your worth, not intellectually but viscerally, you stop waiting for permission to be treated well. You start choosing the kind of love that aligns with the woman you're becoming. And yes, there will be moments of doubt, moments when you miss the attention, the connection, the fantasy, but they pass. And in their place, something deeper rises. Self-respect, peace, emotional freedom, the kind that says, "I don't need to be chosen to know I'm valuable." Because as Louise Hay would remind you, your value was never up for discussion. It was never something he could give or take. It was never negotiable. There's a kind of agreement that never gets spoken, never gets signed, yet it governs so many of the choices we make in love. It's the silent contract of, "I'll settle for less if there's a chance you might choose me later." A quiet, invisible vow, rooted not in empowerment, but in fear. Fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear that maybe, just maybe, This is the closest you'll get to feeling wanted. This contract is not written in words, but in moments. It shows up when you answer his call, even after days of absence. When you cancel your plans because he suddenly remembered you exist. When you justify his emotional unavailability with, "He's just been hurt before." When you tell yourself, "It's okay, I'll wait until he's ready." But your soul is not okay. Your soul is tired of waiting for someone who's still unsure of your place in his life. And what makes this contract so painful is that it was often signed long before this man arrived. It was written in childhood moments of emotional neglect, in teenage years of not being chosen, in the stories you were told about what love should feel like: hard, uncertain, earned. So when a man offers inconsistency, something old inside of you nods and says, "This feels familiar." But familiarity is not the same as safety, and waiting is not the same as being loved. To break this contract, you don't need to hate him. You don't need to become cold or distant. You simply need to choose a new agreement, one that honors your longing without sacrificing your dignity, one that says, "I am no longer available for almosts. I am no longer negotiating with confusion. I am no longer making myself small for the sake of someone else's indecision." This doesn't make you harsh. It makes you honest. It makes you whole. And yes, it might leave a space where he used to be. But that space, once filled with longing, can now become a sacred ground for your own rebirth, because you were never meant to be the woman who waits in the margins. You were meant to be the woman who writes her own story, and that begins by tearing up the old contract, the one that says love must be earned through sacrifice, and creating a new one, signed in self-respect. There's a quiet kind of strength that rises in a woman when she stops trying to be constantly available and starts becoming deeply selective, not out of bitterness, not because she's closed off, but because she's learned, often through tears, that her emotional energy is sacred, that her attention is not an open field for anyone to walk across, that love, to be real, must be mutual, not begged for. Being emotionally available is a beautiful thing. It means your heart is open. It means you care deeply, you feel deeply, you offer presence and affection with sincerity. But when that availability isn't honored, it becomes a gateway for your own depletion. Because if you are always open, even to those who are closed, you will begin to bleed love in places where it cannot grow. And so, there comes a shift, a sacred turning point, the moment you realize not everyone deserves access to your softness, not everyone gets to know your depth, not everyone has earned the right to sit with your vulnerability. This is not about building walls, it's about planting gates, and knowing which ones to open, and for whom. When you are selective, you don't respond to every message out of fear of losing him. You don't rearrange your life just to be near someone who won't do the same. You don't lower your standards just to keep someone around. You become a woman who values her peace more than proximity. A woman who understands that attention is not affection, and presence without purpose is just another form of delay. This shift is not loud. It's not announced with grand declarations. It happens quietly, in how you begin to pause before saying yes, in how you choose solitude over confusion, in how your silence begins to speak louder than your explanations ever did. It's a soft revolution, the kind that changes everything, from the inside out. Because when you stop giving your heart to indecision, you make space for clarity. And clarity, unlike confusion, doesn't need to be chased. It meets you where you are, in your fullness, in your truth, in your worth. Sometimes the man who doesn't choose you is simply holding up a mirror, not to the woman you are today, but to the girl you once were. The girl who longed to be seen, the girl who waited to be picked, the girl who believed that love had to be earned through perfection, silence, or staying small. And when he withholds commitment, when he offers just enough to keep you hopeful but never enough to make you feel secure, that mirror becomes blinding. It's not just his inconsistency that hurts. It's what it activates inside you, that familiar ache, that old script, that deep unspoken question, am I not enough? And in that moment, you're no longer responding as the wise woman you've become. You're reacting as the little girl who still wonders if she's lovable. He may not know this. He may not even intend it. But every time he withdraws, every time he leaves you wondering where you stand, he reawakens a part of you that is still trying to prove her worth, that is still asking, what do I have to do to be chosen? But this isn't about him. It never truly was. He's just the symbol, the echo, the temporary actor in a much older story. And once you realize that, everything begins to shift. Because healing doesn't happen by changing him. It happens by turning inward and asking the inner girl, what do you need that I've been trying to get from him? It happens when you stop looking at him for validation and start giving it to yourself. This is the moment you sit with that younger self, not to shame her, not to fix her, but to hold her, to tell her she was always enough, that her tears were never too much, that her longing was never a weakness, and that now, as the woman you've grown to be, you are here to protect her, to honor her, to stop abandoning her in the name of love. Because when the inner girl feels safe, the woman becomes unshakable. She no longer needs to chase. She no longer needs to wait. She no longer needs to negotiate her value with someone else's confusion. And that mirror, once so painful to face, becomes a reflection not of your wounds, but of your wisdom. She didn't slam the door. She didn't send one last message filled with explanations or pain. She didn't cry in front of him, asking for what he couldn't give. No, she simply saw the truth, not with anger, but with clarity, and decided that her heart deserved more than waiting rooms and empty promises. This woman had loved deeply. She had given chances. She had held on, not out of weakness, but because she believed in the potential of what they could be. But one day, something shifted, not because he changed, but because she did. Something in her soul said, enough, and not the kind of enough that demands anything from him, but the kind that finally gives everything back to herself. She didn't walk away to teach him a lesson. She didn't hope he'd chase her. She walked away because staying had become a slow erosion of her spirit, because the silence between them had started to echo louder than any words, because she realized that presence without purpose is just a form of abandonment dressed as company. And what's most powerful is what happened next, not in him, but in her. She started to return to herself. The laughter that had dulled began to resurface. The peace she hadn't known in months, maybe years, began to seep back in. And the love she had so desperately wanted from him, she began to pour that same tenderness into her own healing. Interestingly, it was only after she left, truly left, that he began to notice the void. Not because she punished him, but because her energy had withdrawn completely. He reached out. He remembered. He tried. But it was too late. Not out of revenge, but out of evolution. She had already met herself in a deeper way than he ever had. Because the most powerful moment in a woman's story isn't when she makes someone regret losing her. It's when she no longer needs him to. We are taught, often silently, that love is something to be earned. That if you're good enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, he will stay. He will choose you. He will finally see what was there all along. And so, we measure our worth by the outcome of someone else's indecision. We wait, we hope, we bargain with our own needs, all in the name of winning. But what if the real victory isn't him changing his mind? What if the real victory is you changing your own? Winning isn't hearing him say, I was wrong. It isn't the moment he realizes you were the one. It isn't even about getting the relationship you dreamed of. Because if that relationship cost you your peace, your self-respect, your joy, then what exactly did you win? True winning is the quiet decision to stop negotiating with someone else's confusion. It's when you realize that you've already lost too much of yourself trying to be enough for someone who never knew how to receive you. It's when you see that the love you were waiting to receive must first be given, by you to you. And that moment, the one where you finally say, I'm done waiting, that is when the shift happens. Not a dramatic explosion, just a soft closing of a door that no longer leads to your becoming, a gentle turning inward, a reclaiming, because you were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person, and now you're ready to ask bigger things of life, of yourself. You're ready to choose stillness over confusion, solitude over scarcity, truth over longing. That's what winning looks like in this story. Not a victory over him, a return to you. There's a certain silence that comes after the last message is sent, after the last moment of hoping fades, after the final thread of maybe breaks. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. Not loud, not immediate, but sacred. You begin to feel yourself again, not the version that was constantly waiting, not the one who twisted to fit into his maybe, but the one who is whole, even in her aloneness. Louise Hay once said, I no longer choose to believe in limitations. And this waiting for someone who refuses to choose you, is a limitation you no longer need to carry. You don't have to perform to be loved. You don't have to wait in emotional limbo to feel worthy. You are not here to be an option. You are here to be whole. The woman who walks away from indecision does not walk into emptiness. She walks into possibility, into peace, into the quiet strength of someone who now sees that being loved starts within. She does not need to prove her value. She embodies it. She does not need to chase love. She becomes the place where love begins. And yes, it takes courage. Because letting go of what almost was is harder than walking away from what never began. But there is beauty in that surrender. There is power in that release. There is a kind of divine grace that comes when you say, I choose me. I choose truth. I choose peace, even if it means walking alone for a while. As Brené Brown reminds us, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. This is what you've done. You've stopped abandoning yourself for the hope of being chosen. And in doing so, you have already won. So, let this be the beginning of a new chapter. One where you don't wait for texts that never come. One where your worth isn't measured by someone's absence or attention. One where you remember, again and again, that love is not something you chase. It's something you are. And now, if this message spoke to you, if something inside you softened, or stood taller, or simply felt seen, I invite you to subscribe. This space is for you, for your healing, for your rising, for your remembering. And before you go, don't stop here. There's another video waiting for you on the screen, a continuation of this path back to yourself. Click on it. Stay with your process. Stay with your heart, because this journey is not about finding him. It's about finally finding you.